So maybe you've decided against the Zone Mortalis tiles, perhaps due to cost, maybe due to storage space, but you still need something to go under everything. What are you going to use instead? Let's have a look at our options. Welcome back to the State of Play, guys. Now, before we start this video, I'd like to call out Tech Life Crisis for a comment made on my previous ladders video. He informs me that the elevators are designed to locate on the runners on the tiles as well as over the top of the columns, which, come to think of it, makes absolute sense because they do that on the platforms. I had noticed that if you don't glue everything together at perfect 90-degree angles, it's quite often hard not to get these little gaps. And a lot of these kits, it's really difficult to plug everything together at 90 degrees. So in the end, I ended up using blue tack on this anyway to close the gap. I should probably have played with the tiles a little bit longer before returning them. So if you're making modular Games Workshop tiles, you might not need the blue tack. But anything else is your foundation and you'll still need it. Which brings me neatly onto today's topic. I've had a few requests on this. Where did it come from? What is it? It's just a scan and a print of my 4x4 Battlemat. I took a few images and joined them together in Photoshop and then printed them out and mounted them onto the card. We'll discover where this came from a little later in the video. Feel free to skip if my face gets in the way. You can do. I have to look at it every day. Let's have a look at the options available to us to lay the foundation for a Zone Mortalis table. These broadly fall into one of three categories: buy, build, print. And these categories each break down further. Let's start with buy. Buy comes in three flavours: plastic, MDF and Battlemat. Plastic being the most expensive and Battlemat being the cheapest based on square footage. The obvious first choice for Zone Mortalis floor tiles are the Zone Mortalis floor tiles. But if you're watching this, then I imagine that's not why you're here. But do consider them because they do work, depending on your budget. You can see more about these in my previous tiles video. So for plastic tiles that are compatible, I'd suggest Sector Fatalis, which is a 3D modelled equivalent to Zone Mortalis floor tiles. You can pick these up at any licensed printer for the Dragon's Rest. And on Etsy, just search for Sector Fatalis. There's likely a few other plastic options out there, but these are one of the best, and they'll work with existing Games Workshop kits. Second are MDF tiles, which are simply just flat MDF sheets with laser cut etchings. TT Combat has some they've called the 4x4 gaming board, because it's a 4x4 gaming board. These are 12 inch by 12 inch, so they'll make great substitutes for the plastic tiles in size. And the price of a 4x4 table on these is the same as 2x2 in plastic, so even if you don't use all 16, it's still cheaper. They don't have super detailed etchings, but do have a grid, so you can always add your own detail if you want. 4TK Gaming also has a selection of MDF tiles that come with various different laser etchings for variability. These will end up being a little more costly, but still cheaper than plastic. And on Etsy, you can find pre-cut Greyboard for use with MDF sheets that you might want to pick up if you want to add your own greebles. Or you can get digital laser cutting files you can use to etch your own if you've got a laser cutter. Again, I'm sure this is not all the options available in MDF, but it gives you an idea of what you could use instead. And you can always have your own MDF sheets cut to size at a hardware store. Battlemats come in a variety of shapes and sizes, and I'd always recommend buying one bigger than you need. You can always play smaller games by putting on less terrain and designating play area boundaries. And you can cut it up into smaller sections, if you've got the courage to take a scalpel to your newly purchased Battlemat. If you buy a smaller mat, you'll just end up buying a bigger mat later if you scale up. They also come in cloth, PVC and mouse mat material, so I guess pick the one that works with your budget. Each type has its own pros and cons. Cloth can get wrinkled, but you can wash it in the washing machine. PVC can be wiped clean, but can curl at the edges. And mouse mat always lays flat, but can be quite heavy and the print can be slightly blurred. There's quite a few of these available depending on your design preference. TT Combat used to do one, but I can't seem to find it anymore. Here's a few I personally like. I'll put all the links in the description for you guys. Necropolis from GameMat.eu, the Underhive from Deep Cut Studios, The Industrial Zone mat from Skirmish Mats, and the Underhive from P-Work Games. This last one's the one I chose because it matched almost exactly with how I wanted to paint up my terrain. Of course, you're not limited to the mats that look like Zone Mortalis. You can pick up any mat you like the look of. I just found that with a grid it makes it easier to lay out columns and walls at right angles, but with another mat you can put them on at any angle you want, anywhere. Games Workshop also have Battlemats, but they've become really inconsistent with them recently. Some of these folded card ones, which I quite like, but others are these sheets of folded paper, and for the life of me I cannot figure out a way to get the creases out. Build. Now you can absolutely scratch build your own table tiles. I mean, they're just 12-inch by 12-inch squares. You just need to decide what you need and how much space you have available for storage. You can make individual tiles over time, or go for it and build a full-size 4x4 solid table, or bigger. There's quite a few channels on YouTube that show you how to do this, so I don't want to reinvent the wheel in this video. Just search for scratch-built Necromunda tiles or scratch-built Zone Mortalis tiles. The concept isn't that dissimilar to what I did with my card tile. They're generally just foam board or MDF with raised parts stuck on to make 3D relief. And you could just pick up that pre-cut Greyboard from Etsy that we saw earlier in the video. Or if you own a cutting machine like a Cricut, just slice your own. If you don't want or need the 3D effect, you could just colour it in or print it out. And it doesn't have to be with paint. We always obsess about paint in this hobby, but if you consider the goal is to get colour on a model, who cares about what medium you use to get there? Pens, pencils, Sharpies, pastels, even basic kids' crayons create a cool texture, and you can seal it with Mod Podge or several light coats of matte varnish. Which brings me on to the third option. Printing. Printing breaks down into two options, 3D printing and 2D printing. 3D printing is obviously 3D, and if you've got a 3D printer you can find tile designs at sites like Cult 3D or Thingverse. These mostly come as smaller tiles, likely because not everyone has a build plate that can accommodate 12 inches. The Sector Fatalis design mentioned previously is always a good option to go for. It uses the open source OpenLock system to allow tiles to clip together. This system is used across a wide variety of compatible scenery for tabletop games. You can even find a load of stuff that is identical to the Games Workshop stuff. I can't see them being really happy about that, so tread carefully in that area. And the last one is using your home printer to make terrain. It always surprises me that people don't use this tool more in terrain building. We've probably all got some form of half-decent printer at home, and it's fantastic at quickly making some scenery. Floors, signs, textures, hazard stripes, graffiti. I've used my printer to make all of these things rather than painstakingly hand paint them all. With waterslide decal inkjet paper, you can make your own decals, banners, flags. The only limitation is it can't print white. And colours can dull down depending on what your underlying colour is. But then at least you've only got the white to paint, and if you left a space in your decal, it's just paint by numbers. Or you could always just put the decal on a white prime and then paint around it. I even used my printer to make modular sump that works on a Battlemat. I'll go over this in a future video. Why mess around with resin pours when you can just print it out? Sometimes it needs to be 3D and sometimes it doesn't. I hope this has given you some ideas on what you can put underneath your columns and walls. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.